Hello, everyone. Welcome to the AP Government Skills webinar presented by the Bill of Rights Institute. We're so happy to have you here to help you prepare for the upcoming AP Government and Politics test. These webinars are designed to help you with the skills required for the test. Today's webinar is on review strategies for understanding and answering the various forms of multiple choice questions that you will see on the test. I'm your BRI host, Liz Evans. I'm the Regional Programs Manager here at BRI, and I've taught AP Government for 6 years, so I'm going to be monitoring the chat and answering as many questions as I can. Today, I'm joined by John Burkowski Jr., who teaches for the Academy for Advanced Academics in Miami-Dade Dual Enrollment High School on the Florida International University campus. He serves as a department chair for social studies. He's been a content specialist for APUSH, AP Gov, and AP Macro, and he's been an AP reader since 2016. So basically he rules. I'm super excited to have him here with us, and you guys get to learn from such an amazing educator. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Liz. Thank you to the Bill of Rights Institute. Good evening, everyone, all students, teachers, colleagues, friends, family. Let's get this party started. We're going to learn AP Government in regards to the skills, strategies, so we can do awesome on the AP Government exam coming up in May and early June. And we, at the end of all these series of webinars, we will become Go Pros. So let's get it done. All right. So, yes, I am John Burkowski Jr. Please call me JB. It is so much easier to say. Today's webinar is going to be focused on multiple choice, the multiple choice portion of the exam. We're going to really just focus on strategies and skills. Just a quick breakdown of the exam, if you recall. Multiple choice is going to be the section 1. You got 55 questions in 80 minutes. That's awesome. You got more time, more than 1 minute per question. And then once you take that break, you're going to get the free response questions. We'll deal with that at another time. We'll mention some details about this year's digital exam later on to see that, but you got 55 questions in 80 minutes. Here we go. This is the exam breakdown. You can find this in the course and exam description. Try not to pay too much attention to the exam weights. Don't use that as a guide for your study habits. Don't say, I'm going to spend more time on Unit 2. It's really not about that. It's about the content. It's that Unit 2 is just a good chunk of the course. And that's what it is. Don't manage your time based on the exam weight. You need to come in the exam knowing all of that. So it really isn't to your study habits. It's really, most of the exam is just going to be assessing more on Unit 2 relative to others. So don't really take that, but now you understand how much of the exam weight is based on that. So here's a big source of the skills. This is what College Board expects you to have mastered by May or June. These are the disciplinary practices. This is really what we're going to focus on. This is really how we're going to apply these skills to processing the information, processing the questions, and applying the content to best answer the questions, not only for multiple choice, but also for the FRQs. For the multiple choice, practice 1, practice 2, practice 3, and practice 4 are what you're going to be applying. Practice 5, argumentation, is really solely the argumentation. You can look over this. It's in the CED. What we're going to do is we're going to apply them on some of these questions that we're going to see tonight. These are the reasoning processes. This is basically taking all that content and the skills that you have mastered and putting yourself in that situation of a particular question. And you have all of this content in your head. You have all these skills mastered. And so when you get to a question, it's not about applying all of it. It's prioritizing, it's compartmentalizing, getting into that, which file cabinet do I need to open to address this? What content do I need? What skills are being applied here? That's what really the reasoning processes here are. Just gives you an idea. You have identify, describe, compare, explain. We're going to get more into those tasks. These are the task verbs you must master. And we can look at very basic and very complex. Let's start basic. Right there at the bottom, you see identify. That's easy. I would say identify and define are almost synonymous. Identify, what's happening? Indicate or provide information about a specific topic. You don't need to get in, you don't need to get into elaborate. You don't need to explain. Well, what's going on? What's happening? That's it. Define. What is it? What is a filibuster? That's easy to do. It's okay. Let's get a little bit more complex. Describe the relevant characteristics. I would say with describe, that is one of the more common tasks that you will be encountering, not only in the multiple choice, but definitely in the FRQs. Describe is saying, like, all right, the House of Representatives, what is that? Well, that is the Chamber of Congress, coupled with the Senate. But what about the House of Representatives? What are the characteristics of the House? Well, it's directly elected. It is based on proportional representation. You're providing the relevant characteristics of a concept, of a specific factual information. Then we have compare. Similarities, differences. The thing about compare is that you got to be fair when you compare. Always have a balanced approach. If you're saying the House and the Senate, don't leave one hanging. You're talking about you're describing the House of Representatives, you're explaining its function, but then what happened to the Senate? And the Senate is waiting there, was like, what about me? What about me? You gotta be fair to compare. So you can both address the similarities, but you can also get into the differences, but make sure that you address both of them. No imbalanced approach. Be fair when you compare. Develop an argument is making a thesis. We'll get more into that when we do the argumentation essay. Draw a conclusion. You're really going to see that task with the quantitative analysis FRQ. Think about when we were in middle school and we had to do those science experiments, and we had to do the board, and we had hypothesis, and then we have materials, procedures. Then we do the experiment, we get the results, and then boom, the conclusion. Based on all that happened, now you have to draw a conclusion on what happened with your experiment. That's what you're going to have to do on the quantitative analysis. You see all the data and you gather all the concepts related to it, and you come to a conclusion. And that's where your understanding of government and politics comes into play to help you draw that conclusion. But without question, I would say the key task verb in government, in just about any AP course or anywhere, explain. Explain is going to be the most common task for the FRQ, and definitely you're going to be incorporating it in your argument essay, at least to make a successful argument essay. Explain deals with how and why. See, in my class, when I ask kids, all right, define this, students would raise their hand and be like, I can do that, I can do that. And so they define it. I say, all right, describe this. I got it, JB, I got it, JB, I got this. Pick me, pick me. All right, boom. And they feel good about themselves. They've correctly defined it. They've correctly described it. And I was like, all right, the two most dreaded questions in my classroom. The one that stops everybody in their tracks. The one where the jaws drop is how and why. Those are the two dreaded questions. And I'm sure you've been sitting in your classroom and you were like, I know what it is, but I can't stand it when my teacher tells me, like, all right, how? Or, well, why would they do that? And now you're sitting there like, hey, you just told me to define. I wasn't here for the explanation. But you need to explain. You have to. That is going to be the key task in AP Government, especially on the FRQs. How and why? Why is the House of Representatives set up based on direct election and proportional representation? Think about when the framers designed the Constitution. They put in the Constitution, the basics, describe, here's what it is. But you got to look to the debates when they were discussing, why are we going to structure it this way? Why are we going to make it based on direct election? Why are we going to base it on proportional representation? Why are we going to look at the Senate and base it on equal representation? Why? It's when you get into those questions is where you truly understand government and politics, and where you can successfully develop an argument. So here's a really cool thing. When you access this and click on it, this will break down the task verbs on what FRQ type, and gets a little bit more into, well, what is identify, what is draw a conclusion. So this will help you out as you try to understand these task verbs. All right. So this is key. Make sure that we get this. And as we go through these webinars, we will tackle each one of these task verbs. Okay. JB, there's a lot going on in AP government. I'm trying to be very efficient with my study habits, with what to review. You got to tell me, what do I need to know? Well, make it simple for you, everything. But I know. What should we focus on? You got to go to the Bibles. You got to go to the big books here. You have to, one source, if you're talking about preparing for the exam, no question about it, you go to the CED, the Government and Politics Course and Exam Description. This is the big Bible for the exam prep. This is where you will find the content, the skills, right, the big ideas, and the essential knowledge. What College Board expects you to know and master by May, by the time of the exam. That's where you go. That's where the source is. But the other Bible is, here's the other thing, the Constitution. Here we have the Constitution. It is the true Bible of the course. It's beyond the exam and beyond AP course. It's also our civic duty to understand the Constitution. So here it is. You need to go here because they may ask you to describe the powers and procedures of Congress, but you need to get here to find that. And yes, you're gonna need to read this if you haven't already. It's a foundational document. It would be good to know anyway for the exam, but this is where you're going to see the specifics. This is where the framers said, here you go. Here's the identify, the describe, and the define. And then you have to, not only when you know this, but then you have to be able to apply it, be able to explain those concepts. So it's all about, those are the source materials. That is the source. Those are the specials. Now, this College Board also includes not just content, specific factual information and evidence, but we also have these foundational documents. Again, the CED will tell you which are the required primary sources that must be understood. You want to get into the main ideas of these documents. So right here, you see you have Federalist number 10, Brutus number 1, and Declaration of Independence. What's great about it is that they classify these, categorize these documents under these big ideas. See here. All right, balance between government power and individual rights with these particular documents. You have the Articles of Confederation and the Constitution. And it goes on and on. But see, as you can see, you got to know it. And federalism with this Constitution, Bill of Rights, again, it's bigger ideas, more than one. Federalist number 70, Federalist number 78. This is what you need to know. Now, if you want a little bit more, especially for the argument essay, where you have to classify. Yes, you can go to my website where I have Declaration of Independence, Articles of Confederation, your weak articles, and here's the Constitution, the Bible. For example, with the Constitution, not only do you have the actual Constitution text, but I also provided a layman's version of the Constitution, because I'm sure we've always sat there and we're like, JB, I don't get I can't speak framers English. I need actual English. Where's the, well, there it is. Boom, you got the layman's Constitution. If you're trying to figure out what they're saying over here, yeah, I get it. Look at the framers. Form a more perfect union. I don't even know how you get more perfect. It's perfect. What is that? Come on, framers, get with the picture. So, but you have the layman's term, but be careful, because the layman's term is just trying to help you understand what is being said here. But specifically, those enumerated powers you have to worry about, those exclusive powers that you have to worry about, you got to go back to the source and you got to be able to read framers English. What I've also been able to do is that, especially for the Federalist papers, generally try to associate them with a comparable anti-Federalist paper. So Brutus 1 and Federalist 10 work very well. Now, Federalist 51 is required, but I've also provided Sentinel 1 as some way to kind of where the anti-Federalist coming from. And this is great because you're going to have to be able to compare the Federalist and the anti-Federalist views. And you may be able to use these as evidence in your argumentation essay. And so it goes down all the list. So that's a resource for you to use. And don't forget that the Bill of Rights Institute itself has provided primary sources and ways to break those down. So thank you to the Bill of Rights Institute for that. Let's go to the SCOTUS cases. There are 15 required Supreme Court cases. Again, what are they? If you're still trying to figure that out, go to the CED, and here they are. And they break it down by big idea as well. And you see that most of the Supreme Court cases are for the civil liberties and civil rights unit. But there it is. And they've been nice enough to give you a general main idea of what the case is about and what some political concepts that they're related to. Now, if you want a little bit more, if you don't want to read too much about it, what I've done is compiled these videos that do a basic overview of each of the required cases, but also some companion cases, as I like to call them, some that are related to these major decisions. If you can also go to my page on the Supreme Court, I've also done it again where I've highlighted, bolded or asterisk the required case, but you also have companion cases that you can associate, and they also include a video explanation. So this is just good part of review and help you with those FRQs. And not to mention that the Bill of Rights, again, has provided Supreme Court case breakdowns and overviews for those major and required cases. So there we are. We have the foundational documents, the Supreme Court cases. Now, what about the content itself? The specific factual information, the evidence. Again, we can go back to the CED, but there is an angel of a GoPro teacher out there that has done this for all of us. They took the specific factual information from the CED and put it in a list by unit, and it is here for you. So if there is specific factual information that you just give me that one list, JB. What do I definitely need to know? Make it efficient for me. Ta-da! Here you go. You have by unit. What is limited government? What is natural rights? These are the terms and concepts that College Board, again, expects you to know and be able to apply through your understanding on the day of the exam. And it's broken down by unit. Got it all for you. Now, got some resources. Let's get into the multiple choice. You got 4 main types of multiple choice. You're going to have the quantitative analysis. That's the data. We'll look into that. You got text-based analysis. That's where you'll see a primary or secondary source. Primary source being, the actual author during that time. And then, of course, you have the secondary source, which tends to be political scientists that are, probably analyzing a primary source to develop their argument. Visual source analysis. Typically, these are political cartoons. It could include maps, images, less on the numbers. The quantitative analysis could have maps and infographics, just like the visual source, but more on the concepts rather than on the data here. More, less numbers here. Text-based and visual source are what we call qualitative analysis, qualitative sources. And then you have individual multiple choice questions. No stimulus. That's what non-stimulus multiple choice questions. There are types of those as well that we will get into today. So one major strategy that I love to recommend to my students is it's not about the correct answer. And bear with me. Don't like, JB, what are you talking about? They're going to, I'm sure you've taken multiple choice questions, especially in different AP exams. And the AP questions I think are really the most legit questions out there. I think College Board does an amazing job in coming up with some of the best developed questions on just about any assessment. And I'm sure you've gotten, just your brain's gone haywire because it's always between two. It's always between two options. I always get stuck there. There's always gonna that detractor that you get away from, but there's always those two. So it gets back to, you don't choose the true answer, choose the best answer. Always go for the best answer. Which option best answers the questions? What do you need to consider? You need to consider what the question's asking, but key thing would be those modifiers. Like, as a matter of fact, the word best, how does it, what would be best illustrated here? What do they most likely support? Or they least likely support? Those modifiers, those adverbs, that's what you want to make sure that you pay attention to and choose the best option. So I look at it this way. So that you see the Family Feud here. And I'm sure, I hope all of us have seen Family Feud, especially if we had to stay home and be sick. But, they ask you, so based on a survey of 100 people, what would you imagine this? And, you got to buzz in and you can say, okay, this. And sometimes the person gets the second best answer, only this many people. Sometimes it's the number 5 answer. The idea is to get that number 1 answer, that best answer to play. And of course, to win the game. And remember, in the final round, You have to try to score all the number one answers to get that $20,000. Now, what's great about some of these multiple choice, I would say all of these multiple choice questions, is that there are those options that are just plain wrong, right? And that's what it reminds me of, that big red X that pops up in Family Feud, and it just comes out of nowhere, and it's just like, and it's like, whoa, I feel it's almost demoralizing. I'm just kind of, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to give the wrong answer, but yeah, sometimes I love it on their show when they're like, they ask the question, they give this bizarrely and just terrible wrong answer. And even the host is all like, oh, here we go. But I love it when everybody's around and we're like, oh, that's good answer. I'm like, no, it's not. No, it's not. But yeah, there are going to be those options where you can just be like, get out of there. So you eliminate that. That's where we get process of elimination. Now, JV, what about the two? Okay, I brought a rubber band. Think about it this way. Between those two answers, it depends on how you are trying to reason it as the best choice. So if you notice that for one of them, you keep stretching, right? You're reasoning, but then all of a sudden it starts becoming rationalizing. So as you keep stretching, right, the more you stretch, the obvious that it's probably not the best answer. But you look at another option, you're like, no, yeah, I didn't have to go that far. I'm sure you probably sat there and be like, oh, you know what, JB, it's correct because blah, 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 and then blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, whoa. You're taking it too far. You're stretching it too far here. Where, give me the shortest way to that answer when you're trying to reason it. So that's part of that process of elimination. And don't forget, there is no guessing penalty. So answer every question. Don't leave anything blank. Do not leave anything blank. Now, on the paper exam, you can skip. If you're seeing that you're getting stumped on a question, skip it. Note it on the exam, but make sure you note it on the Scantron. I have seen many tears shed because students forgot to skip it on their Scantron. I've proctored AP exams where right before the exam was about to be over, I'm seeing somebody like, oh my God, because they forgot to skip on the Scantron. Make sure you do that. Answer every question. There's no guessing penalty. Now let's talk about the 2021 digital exam. As you saw earlier, the format of the government exam, whether paper or digital, is the same. You're going to have multiple choice section, 55 questions, 80 minutes, and you're going to have the 4 FRQs in 100 minutes. One big difference between the paper exam and digital exam is that on the digital exam, there is no skip and return. You have to answer the question on the multiple choice and then move on. You will not be able to go back. That is what it is. So make sure that you answer every question. That is the reality. Answer it. Take your best educated guess. Try not to spend too much time. Be mindful of that. If anything, just put something down. All right. Remember, you have a 25% chance of getting it correct if you answer it, if you fill in a bubble. You have a 0% chance if you leave it blank. You have a 0% chance of getting it correct if you leave it blank. Take your best, answer every question, right? So be mindful of that reality on skip and return if you're taking the digital exam. Don't leave anything blank. That's the one key strategy I have for you. I'm sorry. I wish I had a magic formula. Okay. Speaking of a magic formula, I wish I did. I wish there was this way that I could just wave the wand and say, there you go. I would be your professor of the dark arts teacher and we would do awesome. I would last more than one Harry Potter movie. It would be great. But here we are. We have to base it on strategy. You know what it comes down to? Your knowledge and understanding. Just simple studying, simple paying attention, simple reading, going to the CED, going to the Constitution. Yeah, you have those resources. You have the resources to make it an efficient means of studying. That is your best weapon. That is the magic right there. Know it, understand it, so that we can apply it. Let's start with the main type of question, quantitative analysis. I think these are easy. I think these are some of the easiest questions out there. So let's break it down. What are some ways to approach this? Okay, consider the source. I would look at the title. I would also look at the key. All right, we're gonna break that down. Note the vocabulary terms, and then one of the you're going to do this on just about every kind of source, but for the quantitative analysis, here's something. Notice trends and patterns. Trends and patterns. Students tend to think in absolute terms. And what I mean by that is, so you're looking at a data chart and you're seeing like, okay, increasing, and then it dips, it decreases, and then it increases again and increases, and then it dips and increases. In absolute terms, it's all like, oh, it decreased, so there it is. That's the trend. No. Think about when it comes to trends and patterns. When I think of trends, I think of consistency. What is is it consistently increasing, or is it consistently decreasing? Is it consistently this, or is it consistently that? That's what a trend is. And then, of course, notice the patterns. And you're gonna and why I think this is easy is that with your knowledge and understanding of government, when you see these data charts, these infographics, the number patterns, you're actually going to say like, oh, of course, that's totally expected. I'm not surprised why the numbers are like this. So let's dive into this. So we have this particular quantitative analysis. We have jot the key terms here. All right, relationship between views, civil liberties, gun ownership, percentage who agree, specific right, liberty, essential sense of freedom. And we have the freedom of speech, right to vote, privacy, religion, right to own guns. And the key here is the black dot is gun owners, and the blank white dot would be non-gun owners. Don't forget down here, think about this. Survey, the United States adults, March 13th, April 4th, Pew Research, 2017. All right, so the skill here is to describe the data presented. This is described, very simple. What do you see here? Oh, freedom of speech is this, right? So what is that? Now, the big idea associated with this that they're trying to assess based on your knowledge and understanding of government and politics is describe the rights protected by the Bill of Rights. Now, in the CED, they don't actually list the rights. They don't break it down. They just tell you, go to the Bill, go to the rights of the Bill of Rights. You got to go read the Bill of Rights and break that down. You can find so many sources where it gives you the general list of those rights. All right. So you're going here. What are the trends? What are the patterns? You see that gun owners and non-gun owners pretty consistent with how they feel about free speech in regards to their own sense of freedom. Right to vote, yeah, well, very high. Right to privacy, right, pretty high. Freedom of religion, pretty high. And then it gets the right to go on guns, and boom, you see this big huge disparity, especially between gun owners, which are high in regards to sense of freedom, and then non-gun owners, which no, I don't think so. Which kind of makes sense anyway. You would figure, yeah, a non-gun owner might not, that's why they don't have a gun, perhaps. So sometimes this is pretty basic. So looking at the question, you see, according to the data, both gun owners and non-gun owners, all right, so let's do this process of elimination. Let's try this. A, answered similarly regarding the importance of the right to own guns. Look at that, right there, you're out. Look at, believe that the right to vote was less critical than freedom of religion. Right to vote, freedom of religion, nope, that's wrong. Choose freedom of speech as most crucial to their own liberty. Looks pretty high, looks at it, ding, it's one of those answers. Is it up there? But is it going to be the number one answer? And then we look at D, demonstrated deep division between one another in most categories. This is why I think they're so easy, because when you're describing this data here, there's only going to be one correct answer. There's that one true. This is where true actually comes into play here. So quantitative analysis can be some of the easiest questions. Now, that was easy. Now they're asking you to explain. Oh no, not explain, not the hard one. No, not the how and the why. All right, we're still with the same content here. We're still with a big idea. You have relationship between civil liberties, gun ownership. All right, here's the question. Which of the following best, there it is, that modifier, best explains how poll respondents regard the relationship between the right to own guns and personal freedom? All right, so they're really focusing here. The poll shows there's an ongoing debate over whether gun controls promote or interfere with individual rights. An ongoing debate. Gun control laws, maybe a thing. The poll shows that gun owners and non-gun owners have widely different views over a range of civil liberties issues. Nope. The poll shows that party polarization has a sizable impact on elections and policymaking at each level of government. Where is that? Where's party polarization? Where do they see this? Where could we get that? The poll shows that even the courts have mixed opinions as to whether the Second Amendment involves individual liberty. What? Where's anything maybe about this? So yeah, you're looking at questions that, again, quantitative analysis can be so easy because it's where is this all coming from? All right, so yeah, we're looking at A as the best answer. Okay, I just want to make sure, let's kind of give a clue here. Right. Yeah. Text-based analysis. All right. When it comes to text-based analysis, you're going to get a primary or secondary source. One of the strategies to do is like go to the source, recognize the source's author or creator. It's great if it's somebody like Alexander, the man, Hamilton. It's like, oh, Hamilton, I get it. I know exactly where this is coming from. Let's do this. Of course, what we have here is E.E. Schatzschneider. Who? All right, now, this is not going to be, just so you know, he is a pretty legit political scientist. Now, recognize the text. It's about an excerpt from the Semi-Sovereign People, not something. But if we knew if it was Federalist 10, be like, oh, I got this. I get it. I know what the main idea is. That you could get lucky with Federalist 10, Federalist 51, a required document. So consider the source when you approach these. And then, of course, context clues. Underline or note any vocabulary terms in the stimulus. Let's dive into this quick. All right, so for this question, you're describing the author's claim perspective. Let's underline this. So we have groupist theory, groupist, all right. Pluralist, pluralist. Flaw in the pluralist heaven is that heavenly chorus sings with strong upper class accent. Probably about 90% people cannot get into the pressure system, really talking about interest groups and the policy making process. Pressure system, automatically representative of the whole community, is a myth fostered by the universal tendency of modern group theories. Pressure policies is a selective process, ill-designed to serve diffuse interest. The system is skewed, loaded, and unbalanced in favor of fraction minority. So those key words are going to try to help you break down how to best address this question. So here it's explain how models of representative democracy are visible in major institutions. The models of representative democracy, what are those? Real quick. It's in the CED. Here it is. I broke it down for you. They have participatory democracy, which they have here described, pluralist democracy, which they also described, and elite democracy. Remember, these questions are going to be stemmed from the CED. So going back, which of the following best captures the author's argument regarding the forms of democracy? He's taking a pretty critical view here. He's looking at interest groups that are favoring the upper class. It's that fraction minority in regards to, but which would it be? Is it pluralist or participatory? Let's break this down. Pluralist democracy, which seeks to shield elites from popular opinion, functions best when individuals do not participate in the process. Whoa. All right, so let's see. B, participatory democracy, which emphasizes limited participation. Whoa. Because if you go back to here, it even says pluralist democracy, participatory democracy, which emphasizes broad participation. They're even trying to go opposite here. So that's why I'm telling you that the CED is a key element here. Pluralist democracy, though it involves groups at different stages of the process of developing policy, excludes a significant portion of the population. This seems consistent with the argument here, especially skewed, loaded, unbalanced in favor of a fraction of a minority. Ding! All right. And then, of course, D, participatory democracy, which emphasizes expanded participation, go on, creates too much conflict within the system. But is that really what his argument is going at? C is going to be your best answer. So let's go to number 8. Explain. Here we go. Explain the author's argument, but relate it to these political processes. Explain how variation in types of resources interest groups affects their ability. Which of the following statements about interest groups would the author most likely agree with? What would he most likely agree with? That interest groups play the important function of including more people in elections. No, it doesn't seem, I don't. Interest groups undermine stability by creating too much conflict and polarization in politics. Interest groups tend to overrepresent elite interests. That seems to be very consistent, most likely with his argument based on what is mentioned here, especially with that fractured minority and strong upper class accent. Interest groups have a less power. I'm sorry. Interest groups have less power in American government than political parties have. Political parties, he's not really getting into that. So you have C as your best answer. Okay. Let's go to number 9. Which of the following activities would the author most likely be concerned about interest groups engaging? Most likely be concerned. It's the same skill. Now we're getting into potential problems of interest group influence on policymaking. Would it be educating and mobilizing citizens around their cause? That would be awesome. Of course, we're not going to be concerned about that. We want that. Introducing legislation that limits the power of others. Perhaps, maybe representing broad segments of society and sparking emotional political debates. No, we want that. I wouldn't be concerned about that. We want that. We want broad. Yes, please. Forming iron triangles with bureaucratic agencies and congressional committees. That sounds like the more concerning. The idea that the upper class will use pluralism as a way to get their interests through at the expense of the majority. And limiting the power of others could be something that could trigger others. There could be more resistance to that. But this iron triangle, that is a political reality, and that is, that's a major consequence of these interest groups and these congressional committees and bureaucratic agencies. All right, visual source. Now we have here a political cartoon. Again, consider the source. Might be a little bit more difficult because, of course, we may not be familiar with a particular artist, a political cartoonist, or anything like that. But again, if you can know the source, if you recognize the source, that helps you. But context clues, again, note any vocabulary terms or illustrative terms. Here we have U.S. senators work, and you got the Capitol building, new jumpsuits. And what are on these jumpsuits? We see Johnson & Johnson, ExxonMobil, Nestle, Bank of America, Pfizer, General Motors. These are corporations. Your brain is processing and saying, like, those are corporations. What are corporations? Interest groups. This is where you're processing. So now you have a pretty idea. And obviously, we can't imagine politicians walking in like this. But now I think even before we get to the question, it's like, I get where this artist is going with. He's talking about interest groups influencing Congress members, policymakers. And since they're corporations, what do corporations tend to have? A whole bunch of money, right? Money talks. So which of the following is the best interpretation of this political cartoon? Let's check that out. So we have to explain how it relates. And of course, says explain the organization, finance, and strategies of these groups. Members of Congress are richer than the people they represent. That's actually true. If we've seen the breakdown of our Congress members, there's a bunch of millionaires there. Is it the best interpretation of the political cartoon? Members of Congress represent a wide diversity of political and economic interest. Is that really what the artist is trying to get at? Members of Congress receive political contributions from many special interest groups. Yeah, special interest groups like corporations. And then, of course, this is your ding, ding, ding. Members of Congress are specialists in economic policy issues. I wish they all were, only some of them, but I think we get where the artist is coming from. C is your best answer here. All right. Now, another question here. Explain how required Supreme Court cases apply in 2 scenarios and context. Ooh, this is good. This is great for your your SCOTUS FRQ. Again, it's kind of the similar content here. Which of the following Supreme Court cases most related to the topic in the cartoon? I hope everybody already has this case by now. But this is to remind you that College Board expects you to know the 15 required SCOTUS cases. As you see, they list the 4 here are required, and there is no brief description about them. There's like, do you know what US v. Lopez is about? Do you know what McDonald v. Chicago is about? Do you know what Shaw v. Reno is about? And I hope everybody didn't even need to see this question, but you know that, oh, that's about Citizens United. That is Citizens United v. FEC. They have a basic description of it in the CED, but I want you to be mindful of this, that you've got to know those Supreme Court cases. We're out of the stimulus. Let's go to, it's all up in here. A lot of those stimulus help because it kind of triggers your knowledge and understanding. Now you're getting into, now it has to come from here. So let's get into the basics. According to the United States Constitution, all revenue bills must, revenue bills, but it's according to the US Constitution, government stuff, not politics stuff. Right? Those enumerated powers, the technical, all revenue bills. A, be passed by a conference committee. That's not even in the Constitution. Originating in the House of Representatives. Okay, we all know. Ding! Right? That's key. Yes, revenue bills must originate in the House. But let's just kind of look at the other answers, kind of like why. That's what you also want to do. When you review, don't just explain why the one option is the correct answer. You also want to be able to explain why the other options are not the correct answer. That's what's going to really help you review and really help you develop your skills in processing. Be passed by 2/3 of the Senate. That's just be reviewed by the Supreme Court. No. That doesn't happen. That's not an automatic. Can you see how this just is a simple basic skill here? Describe political. Yeah. What are revenue bills and where do they originate? That's it. That's the basics. Now let's look over here. Which of the following powers allow both the federal and state governments, federalism, to make policies involving taxation? And really it's key. So it's why it's explained, because that's a skill. Explain, because they're applying it to a particular policy. So you can see here, explain political principles, policies. Between the powers shared between the federal and the state governments, we know this to be concurrent. We know that. We can define that. We can describe them. But we also need to be able to explain by connecting them. That's pretty much what explain helps to do, is connect them to particular principles and policies. So we know concurrent powers shared between the federal and the state. Exclusive, it's exclusive to federal, it's exclusive to state. We know that that's not what the recipient allows both. Implied powers, broad, and enumerated powers, specific. Some of these knowledge-based questions can be easy, really quick, doesn't even need a minute, go through it, fly through it, awesome. But you're starting to understand how they, what describe and what explain, you're starting to see the distinction. Be mindful of that. Okay, more knowledge-based, but I put this here because, again, here comes Supreme Court case, a required. Which of the following best describes the holding in Baker v. Carr? What is the holding? And that's, we're getting into the description. Describe the facts, reasoning, decision, and majority opinion required Supreme Court cases. Do you see that? The facts, the reasoning, the decision, and the majority opinion of these required Supreme Court cases. You got to know that. College Board says you must know this. And you have to explain how congressional behavior is influenced by election processes, partisanship. So here we're connecting. Unequal representation of citizens and legislative. You know what? Let's just go over here. Let's just see what they're saying here. What does the CED have to say about this? Baker v. Carr is bolded. So gerrymandering, redistricting, unequal representation of constituencies have been partially addressed by the Supreme Court decision Baker v. Carr, which opened the door to equal protection challenges to redistricting and started the one person, one vote doctrine. It's almost giving the question away. Right? Unequal representation of citizens and legislatures, unconstitutional, may be reviewed by the courts. Done. Bing. Political issues such as reapportionment, redistricting, and gerrymandering are to be resolved by the legislative branch. That's actually opposite of what Baker, racial gerrymandering is a violation of the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause. Is that true? Sure. Is that what Baker v. Carr is about? No, that's what Shaw v. Reno is about. Gerrymandering that favors a single party is not subject to legal action because there's no standard to determine. That's, again, not Baker v. Carr. Is that another case? Yeah. But that's not, again, you have to know these cases. You have to know these concepts. That is the expectation. Here we go. So We have explain political principles. So, it's basic tax, but it's explain how other branches of government can limit the Supreme Court's power. This is awesome. Because you're going to have to see, remember that bulk of the course is those interactions between the branches. Try to limit, which of the following ways could the president try to limit, impact Supreme Court decision? Remember, it's the president. I screenshot from the CED, explain how other branches in government can limit the Supreme Court's power. Boom. So we have congressional legislation to modify the impact of a Supreme. Right. We have constitutional amendments, judicial appointments, the president and states evading or ignoring Supreme Court decisions. This judicial appointments and confirmations, which includes the president and president evading or ignoring Supreme Court decisions, it's also constitutional amendment does not include, process there does not include the president. And congressional legislation is also pretty much just Congress. And of course, legislation impacting court jurisdiction. That's again, Congress. Calling for the removal of Supreme Court justice. Could he call for it? Sure. Could the president try to limit the impact of a Supreme Court decision? Remember, the Supreme Court's made its decision. How could we limit the impact? Instructing the Department of Justice not to enforce a provision of the decision. And here we have the president evading or ignoring Supreme Court decisions. That is one example of doing that. Again, you see how it's explained. We know the president can do this, but how? How could you do this? There's an example. Passing legislation overrides the court's opinion, and changing the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, which is Congress. Again, Congress. Remember, it's the president trying to limit. That's the focus here on the question. All right, so some of these are true, but it really comes down to what is the question asking specifically. All right. Here we have more knowledge-based. Which of the following arguments best supports a claim that the Electoral College violates democratic principles? Go back to what democratic principles are. All right. Again, best supports the claim. We're explaining, again, 1B here. Explain how the Electoral College facilitates or impedes democracy. You have to be able to know and understand that. I've placed a screenshot of that that winner, from the CED, the winner take all allocation of votes per state, except Maine and Nebraska, under the college, or the national popular vote. These are key elements to the debate on facilitating or impeding democracy. And even actually uses this phrase. Think of that. Violates democratic principles, impedes democracy. So we're looking at these choices. The winner take all system encourages candidates to campaign in every state. Whoa. Which limits the attention each state will receive. I'm not going to go to Wyoming. Wyoming is a solid red state. It's only 3 electoral votes. No thanks. I'm not going to go to Massachusetts. Oh, but there's a chunk of electoral votes from Massachusetts. But it's a solid blue state. Where am I going to go? Swing states. You're not going to visit every state. We understand how the system works. All right. So that would actually be cool with democratic principles if we're going to campaign in every state. But we know that that's not how it works. Electors are chosen by the voters in each state, which gives parties undue influence over candidates' success. Well, electors chosen by the voters in each state is pretty democratic. So smaller states are disproportionately advantaged by the 2 additional electoral votes granted each state for its senators. That's where we can start saying violates democratic principles. The smaller states are disproportionately advantaged. And that, when they're looking at that's one of the big arguments about the Electoral College. This in particular. The Electoral College lacks transparency because electors frequently switch their vote during the national. That's one of those. There it is. So again, be mindful of what the question is asking. Remember, best supports the claim. Remember, you're applying this knowledge to different scenarios and situations. Check out the comparison question. This is the first time we've dealt with this. Remember, be fair when you compare. This is a basic task. Explain how the Federalist and Anti-Federalist views on central government democracy. All right. Which of the following is an accurate comparison of the arguments made in the Federalist 10 and Brutus 1? Required documents. Must know. I love these comparison questions because you know what I've noticed? There's a pattern here. Each one of them has a correct element to it. It's true. I've always noticed that. I've noticed with all these comparison questions that never have I seen where both columns are egregiously incorrect. One's going to always be correct. It's always finding the magic, right? It's finding which one is both. So what I've done here is, of course, well, what is Federalist 10 about? Here you go. Superiority, large republic, mischiefs of faction, dispersing power between states and national government. And then Brutus 1, democratic theory, benefits of a small decentralized republic, warning of dangers to personal liberty from a large centralized government. All right. A, factions are inevitable with popular sovereignty. Perhaps. A strong national government is needed under Brutus 1. No. Oh, no. You're out. B, factions are most dangerous at the local level. I like where this is going. Small republics are best for stable governments. Consistent. Ding. And at that point, once you've found that both are true, you can go on, because one's going to be wrong. But if you need to kind of, let me just make sure it should be. All right. Power should be concentrated in the executive branch. No. Once you see that it's wrong, forget about it. Don't even read this. Go on. Don't look at this. It's wrong. This is wrong. Right? The effects of factions cannot be controlled. Popular sovereignty leads to anarchy. No, we can try to control it, but that's popular. Yeah. This is we got our answer. This is what's great about comparison questions. Once you don't need to keep reading this. Once you've noticed that one of this column is wrong, just move on. Just keep going. Don't even look at this. Concept application. Pay very close attention, because the episode 2 is going to be dealing with the concept application FRQ. So see how these work. Look at the multiple choice questions as a source of power. Okay. Explain how political principles institutions. Explain how congressional behavior is influenced. With concept application, they are going to give you a realistic political situation or an actual political scenario, something that actually happened. They're never going to give you one of these fake situations with, oh, this happened on this day. No. It's always going to be factual. So think about what is being said in these scenarios. Again, kind of, when you underline those key terms, despite concerns raised by your constituents, remember the House of Representatives votes in favor of the bill, believing it is in the best interest of her constituents. How is this House of Representatives voting? Voting based on what is best for their constituents, even though their constituents may not agree with it. But what is the model of representation? Again, the CED includes this. It's down here. They don't define it or describe it for you, but they do list it. Let's go through. Okay, delegate, political, trustee. Those are the actual 3 that are listed in the CED. Virtual, what? First of all, virtual from the House of Representatives, directly elect House of Representatives. So that's just out. Delegate, remember, that's the representative is doing it based on what their constituents want. They're not voting that way in this particular case. Political. I like political. Politicals are like, I'm going to try to make everybody happy. I want to do my interest group and the party and the constituents and me. That's not what's happening here. Trustee. I know you're concerned, but I'm doing it in your best interest. I know better. That's what trustee says. I know better. You trusted me. I know better. Now, sometimes trustee could be like, I know better for me. But hopefully we're being a little optimistic. So think about that, how they're applying the situation. Individual multiple choice here regarding concept application. Again, explain. Political ideologies. Which of the following illustrates an economic policy most likely supported by an ideologically liberal individual? This is the scenario. Ideologically liberal individual, economic policy. Now you got to go back and say, like, well, what do liberals think about economic policies? What do conservatives think about political ideologies or economic policy? So let's just go through the question and see that. The Federal Reserve increasing interest rates. This all depends. Again, you go back to the river and it's like, well, how far to stretch it? It was like, well, it depends. What's the economic situation? I would imagine that, they want a more active Federal Reserve to engage, a little Keynesian. But again, it depends on, we don't have the economic situation. So this, maybe. Congress increasing the minimum wage. Aha. That is where an American liberal would think that they want to support the minimum wage. So Congress increasing it, yes, definitely. We don't have to stretch it too much. That's a good answer. The bill that would decrease funding for the food stamp program. Decrease funding. Food stamp. No. Food stamp programs would be supported by liberal. A state lowering income tax to attract businesses. Really, from a liberal point of view, they probably would like, well, are you lowering taxes for particular sectors of the population, perhaps low-income families? They probably would support that, but to attract businesses, not really consistent with the liberal ideology. Again, here we go. Congress increasing minimum wage. Notice about the concept of application. They're applying real-world situations, real political policies to these government structures. You know the rules, the what, when. Now it's applying them. All right, ladies and gentlemen. This is the moment in time where I appreciate your attendance. I appreciate your attention, your support. Do we have any big time questions?
I think you did a really great job of going through those, all of the multiple choice stuff. So if there are no questions, thank you everybody for joining us today. Make sure you like our video so more students can benefit from it. Teachers can show it in their classrooms, because JB is awesome. And these are really good strategies for the test. Please join us for our next webinar tomorrow, same time. And like JB said, we're going to focus on review strategies for the concept analysis FRQ. And you can find more great review items. That was my timer just to make sure. From Supreme Court cases to foundational documents on our YouTube channel and on our website. So we're getting a lot of thank yous out there from everybody. Thank you, JB, and thank you everybody for joining us, and have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.